Hi, I'm Tin from Tin Maxx, and I want to talk about video game remakes. Super original topic, I know, but there's one specific element of video game remakes I want to cover, and I think it's potentially the most important aspect of video game remakes. As I'm sure you're aware, remakes have been popping up all over the place in gaming the last decade or so. Naturally, they existed long before that. I mean, even the first Resident Evil game got a GameCube remake in 2002. But in the last few years, they've become more and more common. And look, this video isn't going to be bashing remakes for existing. When it comes down to remakes, I tend to treat them like any other new game releasing. Some will be great, some will be complete ass, and some will be just fine. That's just how entertainment and media like this goes. There are winners, losers, and ones that just kind of exist. Resident Evil 2 is one of my favorite games ever made, and obviously that was a remake of some obscure survival horror game from 1998 no one ever heard of. Resident Evil 4 Remake is one of my favorite games of this year, so trust me when I say I don't inherently despise remakes just for existing. However, it's probably worth mentioning that a lot of remakes, a big part of the reason they are as good as they are, is because the original game was already really good, but that's kind of beside the point. None of that is what I want to bring up here. Rather, I want to talk about what happens to the original game when a remake releases and what should happen to the original game when a remake releases. A big argument in favor of remakes of older games is that it brings new and fresh attention to the game/series, and I'm definitely not going to argue against that because yeah, that's true. I fell in love with Resident Evil because of Resident Evil 2 Remake, and it led me to playing the original game just to see what it was like, and I had so much fun with that as well. A remake of one of the old Resident Evil games made someone who was barely alive when the original came out a big fan of the series. I even think remakes can do a lot to revive interest in a long dormant or forgotten series. I feel like a big reason Crash Bandicoot 4 was ever even considered was due to the success of the remake trilogy. Look, I know they're called remasters, but they're remakes. Alright, they had to build them from the ground up. That's a remake. That's what a remake is. I was so sure I would never see another Dead Space game again until EA released that remake this year. It's not as good as if they just did Dead Space 4, and it was 100% EA's attempt to cash in on RE2 Remake's success, but still, it's technically a new Dead Space game. Remakes have definitely done a lot of good for some series and franchises, but there is one big problem that comes with them. What about the original? After loving RE2 Remake, my only option for checking out the original were to either emulate it, buy a PlayStation 1 and find an original copy of it, or dust off my PS3 and buy it through the Classics catalog they had for that. That's the one I did, but you know what would have been much easier? Capcom giving me an official way to play the game on my current hardware. I know a certain bird has been asking Capcom for a Resident Evil Classics collection for a long time now, and he's right. Don't let it get to your head, Jayhawk. That is something they can and should give us. I'm all for good video game remakes, but it shouldn't mean Thanos snapping the original out of existence. In an ideal world, we should be able to play a remake of a classic game, then easily follow that up by playing the original, ideally on the same system. Sometimes this isn't a problem, like with Resident Evil 4, which has been ported to every console imaginable. They could announce a port of RE4 for a goddamn Apple Watch tomorrow, and it wouldn't surprise me. I can boot up my PlayStation 5, play through the entire Resident Evil 4 remake, then immediately play the original game because both are there. They're available. How many other remakes can you do that with? And no, The Last of Us Part 1 doesn't count because The Last of Us was already remastered for the PlayStation 4, making the remake pretty redundant. The Spyro and Crash remakes are the only way to play those games on current hardware, meaning the originals are lost to the retro gaming time vortex. It also doesn't have to be an either-or situation. Companies should offer both as an option. Let me play the originals if I want to, and let people who want to play only the remakes play those. Hell, I'd personally take well-made remasters as a viable alternative if they don't want to do direct ports. The best part of Mass Effect Legendary Edition is that I can play Mass Effect on my PlayStation 5. Andromeda doesn't count, for obvious reasons. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Remaster is a banger, and that gave me an easily accessible way to check that game out. Another clear solution to this would be much better backwards compatibility across all of gaming. Xbox seems to handle this pretty well, and Steam has a huge backlog of games from across the years, and that's great. Love that. But what about old school PlayStation or Nintendo exclusives? I know you can stream them or whatever with PlayStation Plus, but I'd rather be able to just buy them one time and own them like I do all my other games. Or as much as you can actually own anything digital, but you get what I mean. Nintendo has been drip feeding us a pretty decent collection of past titles, but once again, you have to sign up for their subscription service and they only offer so many games. And it's annoying because Sony and Nintendo had a version of buying old games digitally back in the PlayStation 3 Wii era. Just do that again. I guess my point with all this is that even when remakes are amazing, a big part of that is the source game. That source game is a piece of gaming history, and we as fans of the medium should be able to experience that history as we want. I could get on Amazon Prime right now and buy Gone with the Wind, but I can't hop on the PlayStation Store and buy a copy of Resident Evil 2. And sure, it's not always that simple when it comes to video games. Sometimes licenses expire or rights for a franchise get thrown around like a cow in a tornado, and sometimes that means games just can't officially be sold anymore. Like with games like Jump Force, but honestly, good riddance in that particular instance. I'm sure legal crap like that gets in the way all the time, but I'm also sure there are plenty of instances where the old stuff is just simply ignored to bolster the new stuff. And look, I'll be the first to say it, that's pretty whack. It all comes down to making older games available for current gamers, and I think remakes emphasize that need even further. Remakes are great sometimes, and sometimes they're even better than the old game, but they should never ever fully replace the original, as far as I'm concerned. If both a remake and the original were readily available to play, then it wouldn't even really matter which one you prefer because they would both just be there.
Hi, I'm Max from Tin Maxx, and I'm in this video as well. Remakes to me are a video game developers following where culture is now, and that is thinking about the past. I mean, the amount of reboots and sequels we are getting in TV and movies really show the consumer's desire to see stories from their childhood. Nostalgia is big right now. The issue with a lot of these remakes, in my opinion, is we are limiting creativity. Most of these remakes have high quality of life changes, but when the story is word for word, it almost gives us wanting a sense of more from the game. I still love being completely wowed by a brand new game. Tin and I played through Spider-Man 2 recently, and it was so much fun how many surprises were around every single corner. You don't get that with remakes. Plus, with the $60 or $70 price tag that these games have, I cringe a little when I see a remake on the market. I think there's a place for remakes for a lot of the reasons Tin listed earlier, but I think it's unfair to have the consumer pay the same price as a full-fledged new game. Not saying that the game developers didn't work hard on this new version of the game, but they didn't have to put as much creative energy into it as a brand new from-scratch game. Yes, they put the puzzle together, but it was with a picture reference. I think there should be a price difference between a remake and a brand new from-scratch game. I know this will never be the case, as remakes are selling like candy off the electronic shelf, but it just doesn't feel right. Nostalgia of a remake can be nice for sure, but in my opinion, we should have more sequels of the stories if we want to revisit the characters. Nowadays, they are porting more and more older games to the newer consoles, and this gives us the opportunity to remember the original stories so that we can move forward into more originality. I know that many of you watching this video right now might not have the same opinion as Tin or myself. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell your best friend to watch this channel, and we will see you in whatever we do next.